Yo, hello, and we're back with another weekly edition of Metagame Analysis. And we're starting this week with a little show. San Diego is on this weekend. If you don't know, San Diego Regional Championships will be happening this weekend, and you will be able to watch it on the Pokemon Twitch channel and probably the Pokemon YouTube channel as well. All through the official sources, of course. And I also plan on doing a stream for the Pokemon San Diego Regional Championships on our Twitch channel. We'll go over as much as we can from like my perspective, because obviously I cannot go to San Diego. We are stuck in Little Indiana so far. But yeah, to get right into it, the first tournament this weekend was the Paradox Cup, and we see once again Joan Garcia getting another top cut with this Baxcalibur Garganacl team with old Mimikyu, Meowscarada, Golden Goat, and Taurus. And this a slight rise in Baxcalibur that we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks, kind of remaining to be true, as we see the second place player also featuring Baxcalibur on their team, though a very different approach to it, using Glade, Salazzle, Hydreigon, Azu, and Amoonguss. And you can see that as like a general thing. And the one seed as well had a very interesting team. They had the Mousehold Annihilate combo plus like Mimikyu, Golden Goat, Hydreigon. And this tournament really showed like Mimikyu in a lot of like interesting places and slowly starting to pick up a little bit, which I think is very deserved. Mimikyu also has like the ability to act as kind of like a perfect Dondozo counter thanks to the move Curse. And this being a Fairy Ghost type, even though Mimikyu doesn't necessarily have the greatest offensive stats in the world, Mimikyu has the ability of its typing, so it's actually pretty well to this run an offensive Mimikyu in this meta. That's because its offensive typing translates so well into a metagame of like Murkrows, a metagame of like Hydreigon, Garchomps, even Mons like Annihilate, Tauros. They're still going to get hit by like the fairy coverage. So this having that like Mimikyu ability it's pretty okay. It's pretty okay. And of course, if you do go up against a Dondozo, it can also become potentially metagame changing. Mimikyu is also really the most consistent Trick Room setter in the format, since we are noticeably lacking P2. We don't really have like a Dusclops. We don't really have that reliable Trick Room source that you tend to have in like most VGC metagames, right? In this metagame, this doesn't have that. So Mimikyu ends up becoming the most consistent way to like say, oh yeah, I can set Trick Room. So even if this is a counter TR, or this is like this purely is a Dondozo's check, Mimikyu has like a lot of potential roles in this metagame. And it's cool to see it ultimately win this tournament with Joan Garcia, as we saw with like Animus and Monkey VGC on the last week as well, where Mimikyu is popping its head a little bit, and I think it will continue to. But yeah, that's it for the Paradox Cup. Then we go on to the next tournament, the Espeon Cup. And the Espeon Cup notably had it's a pretty big tournament on Friday, and it was one of the bigger ones this weekend. I believe had this 100 players in this one, and it showed some very interesting results, right? Like, first of all, we just have a Palafin Rain with Bartek winning 11-1. You have Ike showing up yet again. Ike VGC has been one of the most dominant players recently, and showing off that Choice Band Dragapult team that we talked about on the last week, notably using the Final Gambit Annihilate, all these like very offensive mons to really just take over a game, and the Terra Dragon on the Dragapult, securing that second place finish. And then we have Mario VGC in third with Tauros, Skeleturge, Murkrow, Sylveon, Weavile, and Dragapult. Very interesting team. It's offensive in a way that's like kind of unique, but the uniqueness in it is like pretty cool in itself, as it's another team using the Choice Band Dragapult set, but it's also using like Weavile, which is a mon that's like not quite as good as it could be purely because of the losses it had going to Scarlet and Violet. Of course, not having knockoff anymore is actually a very significant loss, but still Weavile being like the fastest Pokemon, one of the fastest Pokemon in this metagame, bar Dragapult, makes Weavile actually have like a pretty decent niche in this metagame, right? Like, your Ice Dark is a very good offensive typing, even if Chen Pao is not the one using it, right? Because you see with Garchomps, you can just see so many like teams just get hit significantly by like a Weavile. Like this one, Dragapult, Garchomp, and then this one there's a Ringaroo you can hit with Night Slash. Like, there's a lot of dragon type Pokemon. The Garchomp Hydreigon combo, stuff like that is always just going to have like a bit of a tough time dealing with a mon like Weavile, and Murkrow, for example, doesn't particularly like Weavile either, as Weavile can either fake it out, go for like an Ice Spinner, and if you try to Terraghost, it's also still just a Dark type, so it's like, it's a pretty consistent way of like covering in that sense. And we also see a very interesting team around old Bellibolt, and this team is essentially this Final Gambit plus Trick Room and hope you win. Which, you know, honestly, kind of works out sometimes. And yeah, we're going to see it here. We see the Terror type Ghost actually on the Rangaroo, choosing to like, oh yeah, because of the telepathy, you don't need to run like the ground typing, so you can just go Bulldoze and just have Bellibolt Terra, and then Bellibolt can take over a game. And basically, if your opponent just doesn't have a ground type, right, and if something that's just taken away with Final Gambit and that Trick Room is up, that's basically like a very close to a guaranteed win, I think. Because like Bellibolt, Electromorphosis, double damage, Weakness Policy, essentially double damage too, like plus like potential of Terra Electric. That's something that can instantly just end a game. And it's cool to see Bellibolt actually get a top finish this time around. So interesting to see, this team doesn't have the most consistent ways to set up Trick Room. It's really this, it sets Trick Room with Annihilate. But it does have this kind of like Dragon Dance Baxcalibur mode that's kind of interesting as well. I do wonder like how consistent it's able to actually find its Trick Room. Like I'll just actually check the matches on this one, because I am of course a little curious on myself. Like it loses to Bartek, right? And Bartek has an Amoonguss that can Spore the Trick Room. Actually, yeah, as Spore and as like Rain to stop the Torkoal from popping off too. I don't believe there was a way to stop Spore as a... Wow, there isn't a way to stop Spore actually. From this preventing the Trick Room setup, other than this like OHKOing it with like Baxcalibur or Torkoal. Which, there was a Glade there too that could just like Sacred Sword, or you could switch into Pelipper, so there was no way to really just KO Amoonguss. I think that was ultimately what like lost that kind of matchup, right? And yeah, and then the rest of top 8, we ultimately see a bunch of Dondozos, and one we'll actually talk about a bit is in Tanner Master's team. I will check this one, just out of curiosity. Is it the set? Okay, cool. Because there's some ranked ladder teams that were running Storm Drain Tatsugiri with like Fisher on Dondozo as kind of like this semi-bluff, or you didn't actually go for the Dondozo mode. So I was curious if it was like kind of similar to that, but it is not. It is not. And yeah, that's it for this tournament. And we can see here the Bartek team from the Espeon Cup, the Runtal Code, and the Pokey Paste right here. This is a pretty cool team. This like Terra Grass plus Scope Lens. It's something that I've been thinking about with Glade, though I never playtested it as much as I would like. And on Rain, a team that like notoriously this can't hit mons like Gastrodon, for example, and doesn't have like a lot of grass moves. This Rain team has like 3 potential grass moves. And Glade also has another unique niche thanks to Sacred Sword and Sharpness. Sharpness being a 1.5 times boost, and you time that with like the potential crit chance of Leaf Blade and Psycho Cut, 2 high crit moves. You can start having like absolutely ridiculous kind of damage output potentially, and making Glade actually like a Pokemon that's very threatening thanks to its new ability Sharpness. All those blade attacks being a 1.5 times boost, and we all know how broken 1 times boost abilities are. In fact, those are usually just nerfed after their generation, so it's cool to see. So take advantage of Sharpness while you can, you know. The typical trend with those kind of abilities, they go back to 1.3 very quickly. But yeah, Glade, pretty cool tech on Rain. Love to see it. And you see like King Gambit, Pelipper, and Palafin. Another notable thing is the Terra Grass. As I said, there's 3 grass moves on this team, and it's not from that Amoonguss. It's from the Pelipper with Terra Blast Grass, which I think is pretty cool. I don't know how necessary it is. I do question if like Protect or like a Helping Hand would be better there. But it's still like something that is cool in the sense that, because it just allows you to not be walled by the water typings that you normally would be with like a Palafin Rain team. Though I have to be curious that how much that actually like showed up in practice, right? And we also see the good old Rotom, good old Amoonguss, and a lot of like very powerful Pokemon here. King Gambit as well. And yeah, a very cool team overall. And get the Pelipper and the Rental there. And then for the other team we're going to talk about is actually one of the Dondozo teams I was saying. And from Tanner Mask. We do not have a Pokey Paste on this one, unfortunately. But we can at least like show you the rental and kind of give you like a general premise. Basically, Pop Bomb, Big Bomb. You have the Ceruledge as a little bulk up backup mode. Yeah, Sylveon. Basically, Dondozo Tatsugiri plus 4 like pretty good Pokemon in themselves. An interesting like Friend Guard on Mousehold as well, adding like extra bulk to this mode because they don't have another like Tailwind mode, so they're using the Friend Guard bulk to essentially enable the Sylveon, enable the Golden Go, enable the Ceruledge as an option. And that's pretty interesting in itself. And then it uses the Terra Dragon kind of Dondozo moveset as well, which is pretty interesting. So it's cool to see there. And of course, all the rentals we talk about today will be in the description as we usually do. So if you want to see any of those, we'll just have them there. We'll have them there. And the next tournament we'll talk about is the Duran's TV Pokemon VGC Meta Weekly Tour. And I do wonder if that's based off Duel Links, but it's fine. It's definitely fine. But yeah, .1Q getting first place with a very interesting team with Mousehold, Dragonite, King Gambit, Annihilate, Torkoal, and Armorogue. And the cool thing about this team is like as fall, you just have like the ability to set Trick Room, how the power like Calm Mind potentially too. Like it potentially could do like so much damage this so quickly. Because this Annihilate can break something, Mousehold tends to be able to break something too. And then you just have like options like Choice Band Dragonite to clean up. You have options like King Gambit, also a very good cleanup mon thanks to like its ridiculously high attack stat and the Sucker Punch move. So there's a lot of like potential power there. You even see like Terra Normal on the Mousehold instead of Terra Ghost as the full commit into that offensive power. And then you have this little Trick Room mode too, attached to like a very interesting kind of Armorogue set with Calm Mind as well as a setup option, which is very, very interesting for sure. Because like if you just get a Calm Mind up plus a Heat Wave and Sun, like those are like very scary potential breaker options. And seeing a Armorogue team not attached to like Indeedee as well as and still be like this kind of like hard Trick Room kind of core is very cool in itself as well. And you just have like a lot of offensive presence of this like quickly breaking games with this potentially. Yeah, very dominant run by them. The only loss being to Libre, who lost to Chongjun, the Dondozo team. Oh. But yeah, another ones I want to talk about is this Chongjun's team as well. Yet again, we see the Baxcaliburs, right? The Baxcaliburs are here, and 015 BGC's team, who we're going to be talking about a bit later as well. We'll be talking about a bit later. But yeah, we got old Baxcalibur. And this one's a bit interesting because like it kind of just has a Palafin to have a Palafin, right? Like Palafin's a dedicated Dondozo's check essentially for this team. Like normally this team wouldn't have a way to deal with Dondozo, right? It's very committed to this like, oh, I just have Baxcalibur, I have this Volk, it's decent enough offense. But then with Palafin you have the ability to just like bring it for the Dondozo matchup, just haze it off and make things work through that. And also thanks to like Jet Punch, we saw they actually played against the Lycanroc Dondozo team, right? And that actually was a pretty good matchup for it. We saw their top 8 opponent, Dondozo, the Dondozo Lycanroc, you can just Jet Punch it and it's like not a problem anymore, right? And that was like a very helpful thing as well. And you see here, the other Baxcalibur team, a very cool setup as well with Encore Reflect, Light Screen, Foul Play, essentially running Sableye as a Grimmsnarl. And why they run Sableye as a Grimmsnarl here is Sableye is not weak to Steel, so it essentially has better synergy with Baxcalibur, but you still get like a similar kind of value, right? Because you still have Reflect, you still have Light Screen, and you also get a unique move in Encore that Encore can potentially be a bit of an enabler in itself. Because if it's a Pokemon like Golden Go or a Pokemon like Dondozo, if you like catch them with an Encore on a bad turn, because like a lot of what can become scary for teams like that is if they're trapped into a move at the wrong time. Like Make It Rain is permanent special attack drop, so if you catch them off on a turn they don't want to be like stuck into something, then they can become like a bit more lenient. And when you have moves like Sucker Punch as well, it kind of like makes it a bit more easy to handle. And then when you have the ability to like offensively clear stuff, encoring into a Protect or encoring into a Fake Out that tries to stop you, like there's a lot of utility Encore can just have that makes it pretty unique. And we haven't seen like Grimmsnarls get the best usage out of their like third move, I'd say. Like, there's occasionally been like taunt, there's been like parting shot, there's been like fake out on Grim on the screen set, but in general, this hasn't had like consistent utility for itself. Especially because a lot of Pokemon in this metagame do happen to be like T-Wave immune, right? Like Golden Ghost, something that you'd love to T-Wave, is just immune to it, so it's something that has a bit of effect. Mons like Hydreigon, Mons like Garchomp as well. So having like active Prankster like that doesn't mean as much. And of course you can't. Also, speaking of which, I kind of misspoke there. You cannot Encore Golden Go. It's also a status move, but you have Encore for like Dundozo Tatsugiri, and Encore is a slightly better status than like T-Wave can be sometimes. And having the ability to Encore Fake Out to help enable your setup. An easy way to prevent setup from going like too crazy, right? Is this powerful Fake Out and then like setting up yourself. So you have Encore to just like facilitate that in its own way. And that's like a very cool kind of use case. That in itself is pretty unique. And the final top 4 team we'll talk about from that tournament is a hard Trick Room team with Oranguru, Kingambit, Hariyama Torkoal, Tyranitar, and Scovillain. Importantly here, it's just I have 2 options. You can like enable your Trick Room with your Scovillain plus Rage Powder. You have like Hariyama to enable it too. And then you have like, this is a very, very powerful breaker, right? Torkoal is this, Torkoal plus Instruct is something that can break through like basically any team in the format. And then you have mons like Kingambit and Tyranitar that are this like generally like pretty strong Pokemon, especially if you go into like Psy Spam, right? Because Psy Spam plus like Armor Rogue is something that generally can just stomp on Torkoal teams. But thanks to having Terra Dark Hariyama, having the Dark type Kingambit, having a Dark type AV Tyranitar, that's a lot of like very potent options to help deal with a mon like Armor Rogue, and that's really just something that's going to help you in general just get through that matchup and then help Torkoal to sweep through everything else. And you have an interesting Chlorophyll mon in Scovillain that notably has the Grass Fire typing, and it can take advantage of that Sun for the powerful flamethrowers. You can take advantage of like the offensive with this energy bulk and the offensive grass typing, but importantly having Rage Powder as well. Even though Rage Powder may not, Rage Powder is like a pretty general good option. That's like, even if you're sacking Scovillain, which I imagine a lot of those games will be like, this is a potential sack. It's like, even sacking Scovillain is, if you get your Trick Room up for the sack, it can ultimately become worth it. Because having a mon like Torkoal next to a Oranguru with like 4 turns of Trick Room is something that can like take over a game so fast that sacking a Pokemon for that advantage may not necessarily be bad, and that's a premise that is like ultimately taken advantage of very well by this team. So it's cool to see there as well. In the next tournament we're going to be talking about, there were 2 New Year's Eve tournaments. Where first of all, we'll talk about the Lily of the Valley tournament. And this one had, I believe, 68 entrants, 60 something. I'll actually go back and check this so we know. This so we know. But yeah, if you want to go to find tournaments like this, a lot of these are on Limitless now, and Limitless does have a way to search it. You can put it by Pokemon VGC, and you can get tournaments like this up a lot easier. And yeah, 68 players for Lily of the Valley, and then 41, and then 193 for the one we're going to talk about later. And you'll see the numbers for the Espeon Cup. We talked about it earlier here too, at 177, and Duran's at 156. But yeah, to get to it, the New Year's Eve showdown by Lily of the Valley, 68 players. We won't talk about this one too much, but it was won by Lucky Sama. And we do see a very kind of like this Grim defensive, and that's what I was talking about earlier, taunt as like the 3rd move on Grim. And then you get like Garchomp with a Terra Flyer, Volk with Leftovers. But yeah, Leftovers plus Green plus Volk is something that has like picked up a little bit recently, and I think Volcarone's is a generally very good Pokemon. Though it does need a fair bit of support to ultimately like get full running, but once it gets running, it's something that is uniquely hard to break. It is also Terra Fire Amoonguss, which I'm a bit curious about. I guess it's not going to be weak to Meowscarada like that, which is pretty cool. Because typically having Meowscarada into an Amoonguss is like in general pretty good, but I do question if that's worth it. Like I think it's Steel or I guess like Dragon Amoonguss, right? So you can still maintain the fire resist would be cool. Then you become weak to Fairy and Dragon. Interesting type choice, for sure. I can see like the utility of it, but just a bit curious. You won't Terra Mungus much anyway, so it's kind of fine. But yeah, the other interesting thing we see here is Terra Grass Specs Rotom Wash. You see the Corviknight with the Brave Bird, Bulk Up, Tailwind Roost. And that's a set that like came up a bit early on as well. This having the ability to... This Corviknight's strongest stab move, but still having the ability to like take Bulk Up, take Tailwind, and take Roost. Because this was a problem that we saw a lot in like early Sword and Shield actually. Is that Corviknights felt in this weird place where they kind of wanted to be this bulk up setup set, but then they like lose their utility, so it's like kind of awkward. But this set that's ultimately this taking advantage of only Brave Bird allows it to this get its utility in that way, and this be cool with it, right? You have your setup, you have your Roost, you have your stall ability, and you also have your Tailwind to set up your Garchomp to this do a lot of damage, set up your Rotom Wash too. In general, a very cool team by Lucky Sama. Very cool team. Very cool team. Yeah, that's their open sheet. I will try to look at... I guess like the next interesting things are like there's a Houndoom here. Which the Houndoom Staraptor stuff, it was pretty interesting. I won't go into too much detail on these. For sure, but... The other interesting thing was like the Glaceon. I actually think this is pretty cute, because like Glaceon is a very like high stat Pokemon, so this having it in Snow plus an Assault Vest makes it basically unkillable. And then that was something I just found a little cool when I was looking through these for sure. And you also have like the Mousehold Annihilate combo and like Talonflame plus Hydreigon, the Scope Lens, Focus Energy stuff with Snarl instead of Dark Pulse, which is pretty interesting. And Terra Fairy. Terra Fairy is pretty cool because it makes opposing Hydreigons have to think a little, because like, oh, you want to Draco my Hydreigon? Ooh. I don't know about that one. But yeah, that was a pretty cool thing to see. We also see Zwan with the Hariyama Rain. And we see some interesting stuff as well. The Volk, Dragonite, Kolingo, Murkrow, Azu, Meowscarada, Grimm, Sylveon, Garchomp, Dragonite, Volk, Amoonguss. And of course, you want to like look more at these teams. And this one's of actually the Parchog Grimm instead. But yeah, if you want to look more at these teams, you can see them in the description, of course. Unfortunately, for a lot of these last tournaments, we don't have as many rentals that we can just look at. But, you know, that's how it be sometimes. And yeah, the next tournament, the 40-man Pokey Village Backyard Brawl. Ultimately won by Simipour. And yet again, we see Ike. Good old Ike. Getting another big performance here. And I believe Ike is actually, like, rank 1. Out of like the VGC ladder tour thing, because there's like someone put together like all the limitless tours and like had like a little showdown ladder thing with it, and I believe Ike is currently the #1 on that. But yeah, we already talked about his team in the prior tournament. I do not believe he changed it. No, he did not. But yeah, onto this Simipour's team, the winner. We see like the Hydreigon Azu. And I think it's important to talk about here is like Azumarill aren't really running Belly Drum because Belly Drum is a bit slow for the format and moves like Haze exist. So Azumarill are instead taking value by this. If they're not part of the Parastrap team, Azumarill are instead taking value of this having a very good offensive typing with like Aqua Jet, Play Rough, and actually taking advantage of Liquidation. Because generally, like, if you're a Belly Drum Azu and you're in front of like a Murkrow of Haze, then you're losing a lot of your utility. And if someone has like very powerful spread moves, like let's say a Specs Golden Gold Make It Rain, then they're going to KO your Azu. They're going to stop your Azu pre the Belly Drum. This is because of that strong spread attack damage. So ultimately, Azus have begun to like this forego Belly Drum altogether. No one's really using Belly Drum right now. Instead, that's going for like either this 3 attacks per attack, or even sometimes this 4 attack with like an Assault Vest, or even a Choice Band. That's been a pretty cool set. And we see like Safety Goggles Arcanine with the Grass Terra, Life Orb Garchomp. And this is what I was talking about earlier, the Fire Amoonguss actually. We get to see Dragon type Amoonguss. And Dragon is a pretty cool typing actually, because like you gain so many resists. Of course you will, the main weaknesses you have, and you will still have a weakness that's still there, of course, with the Ice weakness. But since like Ice isn't really the most common typing in the world, you kind of get away with that one a lot more. But the more worrisome ones are like Dragon in particular. Fairies exist. I think Sylveon's a very powerful Pokemon. We are seeing Gardevoir with Ike's team popping up a fair bit as well. But ultimately, Fairies aren't like everywhere, and you can have a lot of options with it, especially having your own Golden Go. And the Dragon one is the bigger one, really, because like Hydreigon, Garchomp, even on this team alone, you see both of those mons. But thanks to him also having his own Hydreigon, Garchomp, some of the best Dragon counters are dragons themselves, right? And you have two very, very strong dragons, and you also have an Azumarill that's one of the better fairy types you could possibly get. So it is respectable to have Terra Dragon on that team. Though there is some like potential where you like stack too many weaknesses, but it's ultimately like pretty cool. And then we see Traveler Unknown with a pretty cool team as well, using the Focus Energy, Hydreigon stuff, but with Salazzle and the Bulk Up set, but with Vital Spirit. I seriously don't agree with this, and I'm going to say it again. I don't agree with Vital Spirit. You should be defiant. Come on, guys, don't be scared of this room. But yeah, we'll move on to the next tour now, and this is really like the final big tournament. I went over it earlier, but this tournament had like the most entrants all week, and it was just like yesterday. Which was a bit crazy, right? Yeah, we'll all look at it now, but yeah, 193 actually is this right there. Which is, that's actually ridiculous. This tournament happened on a Monday, guys. A Monday at like 7 p.m. I didn't enter this because I wanted to sleep, Matt, guys. Like, come on. How, you can't just have the biggest tournament of the week on a Monday? What the hell? At 7 p.m. you guys stayed up till like 3 a.m. guys. What the heck? But yeah, ultimately it was won by a 0-15 VGC with, once again, as I was saying, we're going to end up talking about this team. The Baxcalibur. Back at it again. And Baxcalibur is something that is really like taking on a lot. And this one's actually running Terra type ground with Terra Blast. And we also see the Mimikyu set that I was talking about earlier, where you just have Curse to potentially deal with any Dondozo matchups. You have the Trick Room set. You also have like the offensive power, Life Orb, and Play Rough. Because unironically, Mimikyu is a lot stronger than you may think. That's because of how good its offensive typing is, even though its stats are pretty bad offensively. And we also see the King Gambit with Terra Flying in an Assault Vest. The support of Volcarona with the Overheat Struggle Bug, Rage Powder Protect, Flower Trick, Knockoff Sucker, Protect Meowscarada, and Rotom Wash. All very, very powerful Pokemon. And 0-15 VGC really just dominated. And I believe that with that tournament as well, they went 10-0. And they also got like 3rd place in the other tournament we were talking about. So a very, very dominant one, taking over Sven VGC with a Garchomp, Hydreigon, Rotom Wash, Skeleturge, Amoonguss. So we see that kind of team again. Already won over this a fair bit. And then with Polka, we actually get our first Rapska I've ever seen this far up. But they're using it with Fair Draft as well, which is pretty interesting. And they are using the Beat Up plus Annihilate strat. And along with Assault Vest, Hariyama, and some interesting Pokemon too. Yeah, ultimately, Armor Tail, Fair Draft is a very consistent Trick Room setter. Stops all priorities, including what most teams usually have to stop Trick Room. Ultimately ends up being like Taunt from a Murkrow or some like random Fake Out plus offensive pressure. So Fair Giraffe is actually a mon that can get through that like pretty decently. And we also see Terra type Rock on a Rapska, which is interesting because Rock is not really a great defensive typing, but it doesn't share any weaknesses with Bug Psychic, so it does make sense to see that to a sense. Though it is definitely like very interesting. And we also see the Revival Blessing too, the Bulk Up set, and we see the Amoonguss and a Headlong Rush Hariyama. If you don't know, Headlong Rush, new move, ground type CC. So basically they have a Mudsdale, or but that also has Fake Out now and Feint, which is pretty cool. And yeah, we'll see B Smithy at 4th place. B Smithy actually cut with his team a fair bit. We've seen them play this team already, and they're doing it again with the Life Orb Talonflame this time. And Life Orb Talonflame is actually like pretty important because you're able to get like Flare Blitz KO onto opposing Golden Go, and that's something that's actually like kind of important because there's a lot of Talonflames that aren't running like the damage boosting item and foregoing it for items like Covert Cloak, Safety Goggles, Expert Belt. But in like actuality, you kind of miss out on like the damage output. And this running Protect so you can afford to run that damage item and instead taking advantage of it that way. And this also getting that fire move in is like in general pretty good. So it's something that I very much respect to see from B Smithy. And we also see the Parting Shot Grimmsnarl, the Amoonguss Garchomp, Golden Go, Boss Rotom. The last interesting thing, because they chose to go Life Orb on Talonflame, they actually chose Leftovers on Golden Go, giving that extra survivability, which, while interesting, is a bit fair actually, because Golden Go is actually surprisingly bulky, and having him on like Grimmsnarl as well, you might as well take advantage of that bulk and then have Pollen Puff. So it's a very different kind of mode that you can go. You either go like hard offense with like Talonflame plus Golden Go plus Garchomp plus Boss Rotom, or you just have this surprisingly defensive core, like deceptively defensive around Grim, Golden Go, and Amoonguss. So yeah, congrats to Beastmithy. Pretty cool team, pretty cool team. And we also see Iceberg VGC, and we also see Ike get in Top Cut again. We see Ike get in Top Cut again, but with a very different team. A very, very different team, right? Because now Ike has converted to the Baxcalibur stuff. So I will actually take the liberty to look at this one. And they chose to be Terra Ground Baxcalibur with Ice Shard, Glaive Rush, Terra Blast, Protect. And they also have Toxic Spikes, Meowscarada to kind of act as... Which is interesting, but it actually acts as like their Dondozo matchup, right? If Dondozo doesn't switch in immediately, then it's Toxic Spikes or just go down, and then it will switch in and it'll just get poisoned, and all of a sudden its reliability means its recovery means a lot less, and then you still have the ability to like rotate Paldea Tauros plus Amoonguss plus Pollen Puff, so it still has like a pretty standard way to just like answer Dondozo through that. And you also have the Quiver Dance Volcarona and the Sylveon with the leftovers. You'll see something with like a lot of like Japan tournaments, and we saw this when we were talking about one of like LCS a few weeks ago, and like the Terror Run offline tournaments. That Sylveon's actually a Pokemon that's very like hyped up in the Japanese metagame. We'll see it on like a lot of like Dondozo teams that were top of the ladder, all had like Sylveon from the Japan players, and we see this here too with Sylveon here. And I think that's one of the main disparities between the East and West metagame, is how much like they value Sylveon. Like I think I remember seeing like a lot of tier list from some Japanese players. You know, see Sylveon ranked S tier, and then you look at the West and like no one's really playing Sylveon in comparison. I think we can just look at this tournament. The Sylveon usage is like nowhere close to how it is in Japan. Like we go all the way down to 34th with Talon, and he's just using a Japanese rental to actually get a Sylveon player, right? That's... Yeah, you go down again. I believe this is also a Japan rental from Cable. And yeah, that's like this is a general trend, right? Japan does value Sylveon more, and has like experimented with Dondozo in a lot more different ways too. It's a pretty interesting disparity, And personally, I'm not too big on Sylveon either, so I'm not sure if it's like correct, but it is nonetheless very interesting to see how the metagames are a fair bit different. Ultimately, we didn't have a Japan tournament this weekend, so I can't really go over that, right? But it's still cool to talk about nonetheless. And for the final tournament we will talk about, though, is actually a tournament from Hong Kong with 83 participants doing it for a Nintendo Switch OLED, a little sponsor tour. And we get to see what happens here. Oh my god, Dondozo Rental City. Is this the Fisher Dondozo? Okay, they didn't run the Fisher Dondozo. They didn't they didn't run it good. But yeah, there's the Tyranitar Lycanroc stuff. There's one with Armrogue instead. We get like Mousehold, Dragapult 2. And we also have 5th place has a... Oh yeah, 5th place. This was a rental. The one Cable used was in fact a rental. But yeah, all the rental team codes, you can get them from this website. I'll link it in the description as well for you guys if you want any of these teams. And yeah. Oh, this, yeah, it was a Japanese rental. What's a Japanese rental? I see. But yeah, if you want to see any of the teams from this, because they actually did a good job, like, just showing all the rentals here and showing all like the Pokey pace for the ones that didn't have rentals, except for this one. But I think this was the Scopeland's Hydreigon team actually, so there should already be a rental on that. But yeah, like it's right here. Yeah, it's just this team. So there's a rental there too. But yeah, that's the last tournament that we have to talk about for this weekend. But I hope you all had like a happy New Year's, had like a good time. We welcome the New Year's, and we get on to San Diego Regionals on the weekend. And also importantly, we're going to be in the ladder reset soon. And this, for you guys, we'll do another video, a little bit of a metagame weekly analysis to a sense, but for the ladder, right? The whole last month analysis, we'll go over as many like rental teams as we can find. It should be like a decent stream. It should be a decent time. Me hopes. And yeah, if you like this kind of content, let me know, because like you know, it kind of helps algorithm. But yeah, I think that's about all we have to say for this one. I'll continue like going over these. Oh yeah, there's one final thing to talk about, of course, is, as you may notice, this is being uploaded on Tuesday. Generally these we try to go for Monday, but with tournament coming on like Monday, like the Beanie Brawl we went over was a 193 person tournament on a Monday. So I just moved it back to Tuesday so I could cover that with the last week as well. I think that makes a bit more sense, right? Than covering it for the next week. Because like then everything gets disorganized and I publish a video. Because like there's not as many like big tournaments on Tuesday, to be fair. Though there are a couple actually. Because like we went over Limitless, we can talk about it here as well. There are a few. But yeah, you get this tournament. Upcoming. In game Pokemon VGC, and you'll see there's like a couple tournaments here, right? Ignore that one, I don't know what this is, but yeah, Tommy Hayden's 40-man tournament today. It's pretty cool. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that in general, and that's very like Limitless has really become like the centralized way to go over tournament stuff like this. So, pretty cool. And yeah, for real now though, that's all we have to say about this week. We'll be streaming for the San Diego Regional Championships. We'll be doing like all that stuff too. And we'll be going over some of the teams that hit the top of the ladder, because the ladder reset will be tomorrow. So once we get that to happen, we'll have like a big stream, and I'll actually be back after some like medical stuff too, you know, some like hospital appointment. And then once I get back from that, I'll just record a video going over like ladder teams. And then we'll just start getting gameplay content back to you after like the little hospital appointment I have to go to, and see how, depending on how that goes, of course. But you know, yeah, that's really all for this week. Thank you guys for watching. Later.